Oh, do you gain the skills necessary to access the Analytics Leadership Club? So if you're here to answer that question, you are in the right place. My name is Francis Wade, and welcome to the first webinar in our conference series. And as usual, I want to make sure that you're hearing me and I'm hearing you because we are in for a heck of a conversation today. If you're hearing me, just drop a note in the chat and I'll make sure that I'm being heard. Hearing, great. Hi, Jody Ann. Hi, Olivine. Didn't you just send me an email? Yes, you did. Hi, Janice Hemmings. How are you? And we're seeing people from all over the region. Oh, yeah. Coming in today. We're going to have a very, very full house, but let me just start sharing my screen so that we can get the conversation going. So you may be asking yourself, what is this analytics club of which he speaks? And that's why we're here. We're here to have a conversation about what this club is. Does it exist? Is it real? And if it's not real, then well, should I pay attention? If it's not real, should I find out? If it is real, is there anything to what this guy is saying? And when you hear, perhaps not from me, but from those who are deeply involved in the world of leadership companies, of companies like or guest Jane, and someone who's actually leading an analytics unit in a company, and that would be Karen. So when you hear from them today, you make up your own mind and you'll say, I don't know if I believe Francis or not, but today we'll find out. So to get things going, and we'd love to hear where you are today. And to do that, I'm gonna just pop this poll on the stage. And this poll is more than just us, being nosy. We really, I'm gonna let me hide my own picture so that you can see. Let's see the poll completely. Okay, here we go. And to answer that poll, I'm comfortable with Google Sheets or Excel. We want to know, but it's not just because we're idly trying to be inquisitive and nosy. We actually are asking the question because we want to tailor our presentation to the audience that we have today. As you can imagine, there's probably a wide range of comfort, expertise, proficiency. But today, the question that we're asking is one around comfort. So let's see. We have agree. Great. 52% seems to be winning. Fantastic. That tells us a lot of information. Folks, just keep answering those questions so that we can know where you're at. Neutral is running just behind agree at the moment. So somewhere between agree and neutral is where the comfort level is. Okay, thanks for answering that. I'm gonna pull the poll from the stage. Has everyone had a chance to answer? Go ahead, going, gone. And the winner is agree with 50%. And second, we have neutral, followed by strongly agree. Okay, so there's a good deal of comfort. So let me close out the poll. Hide it from the stage. I'll bring myself back on. And I'll tell you what you could expect from today. So we strongly recommend that you turn off all distractions. This will be an interactive presentation, which means that we'll be nagging you for responses as we go along. We'll ask you to drop comments in the chat and we'll be responding to them. However, if you have questions, you'll see that there is a Q&A tab. If you follow that yellow line, there is a Q&A tab for you to drop your questions so that we can really see them. That's the best place to put a question. You may find that today, if you drop a question in the feed, the regular feed, that we'll actually lose track of it because other people will be adding on their comments. And we don't have any resources today, but after the session today, we'll be, I'd say we're repairing to the lounge. So we'll be joining the lounge where you may know that we have private tables where you can engage in private conversation with other people who are attending the webinar. So it'll automatically, the page will automatically change. We'll go from presentation mode to lounge mode. And if you're here, you want to talk to one of us, one of the speakers, or any of your other colleagues, All you have to do is to click on a table and you'll be instantly placed at that table, and you'll be able to have a private video and audio chat with other people who are on the table. Today's session is being recorded, and there will be a limited replay of this recording all the way up until around August 17th or so. And why do I say August 17th? Because that's the date of our second webinar. So where in the world are you? If you're not familiar with CaribHRForum, actually, no one here has seen this chart before. So welcome to our conference series. So our conference series is starting today, September 26th. It continues on October 17th, webinar number 2, second webinar. These 2 first webinars are complimentary, as you can see from the screen. Then we're going into training around Excel, spreadsheet training, which are the first 2 workshops that are going to be in the month of November. We're taking off December, and then we're coming back in January for analytics or analytics unit workshop. Some very, very unique training that we've detected in our work that we've done with in analytics here in the Caribbean. So if you have no idea about CaribHRForum and what we're about, or our conference series, this is our 5th series in a row. Started during COVID. As you can see, the one in the top left, 2020. Yep, that was the first time we had an online conference, a virtual conference, and it was a 3-day conference. And for the first couple of conferences, we had a wide range of speakers, and we tackled all topics. Then we started to detect that there were some real needs in our community, in our membership, in the area of analytics. And we focused down a great deal to one topic, which was HR analytics, and that was in 2022. Now, when we focused down in that year, we found that the number of experts in the region was small. So we kept the topics very, very quite broad. And what we've done starting last year is to say, not only is it about HR analytics, it's about people analytics, which means that analytics would cover any part of the business that relates to people. So any manager should benefit from using people analytics, right? Including the C-suite, any supervisor, even the board, as long as the analytics have to do with people. So eventually, at some point, we'll be hopefully attracting managers from across the board in the region who need expertise in people analytics. But for the time being, our focus has been on our HR audience. And why have we focused on our HR audience? Well, I'll tell you why in just a minute. But right before then, I'll give you a couple of advertisements. The first is that we are currently undertaking our annual, it's now an annual event, or Caribbean Compensation Survey in partnership with Mark Rim. And there you'll see a couple of links. Let me drop one of those links in the chat if you've not completed the survey yet. Here's one of those links. Here we go. Drop that in the chat. Now, our take on this particular survey this year is that this is an opportunity to create data. It's an opportunity to take that data and share it with your management team. It's going to be unique in the sense that it would show your data, but it would also show your data in comparison to other numbers in the country that you're in and in the region. So guess what? It's a great opportunity to engage in people analytics. And guess how much it costs? Drum roll, please. It's absolutely free. So consider this to be an opportunity to get your hands and your feet wet, actually creating data for presentation at highest levels of your company. If you find that the offerings that we have here at CaribHRForum are, like, let's say for argument's sake, that you're someone who's at a higher level, that you are beyond Power BI, you're beyond Tableau, and you are looking for even more background in HR analytics, AIHR offers a analytics certificate in the programs that they offer. So this is a Dutch company that we've partnered with. They have a 2-year program, sorry, a 12-month program. And in that 12-month program, I think you take 10 to 15 different courses. and one is definitely in HR analytics. Now, you may be wondering, wow, that sounds way beyond where I am. Maybe I shouldn't even be in today's webinar. Well, the good news is that today's webinar is for you if you're an absolute beginner, you don't even know the first elements of using a spreadsheet. You've never used it, you've never used Excel. It's also for you if you are proficient and have not yet made the transition to the real analytics tools, let's call it that, like Power BI and Tableau. Those are the ones that really pack a very, very big punch, and the ones that people who belong to societies like this one use routinely. So what's this? Well, since last year, Stephanie and a group of others have gone ahead and created a society for people analytics. I think I have this saved. Yes, I sure do. If you want to find out more about the work that they're doing, it's a couple thousand people that have joined in a very short space of time. So it's just a sign that the business of people analytics is taking off here in the world, actually, not just in the region, but it's happening in the world, and it's going to take on a whole new life of its own. So if you're here wondering what the future is of this particular approach, you're in the right place. So to get us going and to sort of bring us into the world of being a Caribbean HR manager, here is Celia. Celia is an HR manager, and she's just been reorganized. Up until a month ago, she reported to the CFO, but guess what? He up and left the company. So now she reports to the CEO directly. And she's hoping to receive a real promotion with a VP title and all the related perks. Maybe a CHRO title or a CFO title. That's what she's thinking of. So far, the CEO, he's not really mentioned the possibilities. Her boss hasn't really talked about this. She has it like a private wish. So she's sitting in her very first C-suite meeting in her new capacity, and she's kind of shocked at how fast the conversation is going. The CEO, he's gotten up and he's pointing to the screen, and he's pointing to a spreadsheet that's on his laptop. She's sitting beside his laptop, and he turns to her and says, Celia, can you increase the interest rate by 0.5%? And he's still looking at the screen. His back is to her. And he's sitting there kind of waiting for the numbers to change. But nothing is happening. So he kind of turns around to see what's going on. And he says, any day now. He's kind of laughing and, thinking that she didn't hear when he asked him to go ahead, he says. No, he really turns around and he looks. And her face is bright red. No, not all Caribbean people can go bright red. But I'm one of the ones who can, but she's flushed. Why? Her fingers are hovering over the keyboard, but they aren't hitting any keys. She's frozen. And then the truth hits him and everyone else in the room at the same time. She doesn't know how to use Excel. And he gives one of those eye rolls, one of those Caribbean ones. After a sharp intake of breath and probably a chips of his teeth, he picks up the laptop and makes the edit. So the meeting continues without missing a beat. But the next few times he asks someone to change the numbers on his spreadsheet, he turns to his chief marketing officer. After the meeting, Celia calls her coach and she says, I need help and I need it fast. So the challenge that we're facing today is that according to the CEOs that we've worked with, and Jane will weigh in on this, and so will Caron, that people analytics skills aren't developing fast enough for their liking. In last year's conference, we detected 2 areas that were of particular problem areas. Let's call it that. The problem areas were the first, that the core skills that you would want to have to operate in the C-suite in order to be a full member of the inside club, those skills are missing. And the second challenge is that whether or not the skills are missing, forget that for a moment, is that CEOs are turning to their heads of HR and they want people analytics units to be developed anyway. So they want the units and they want the capability to happen. Whether or not who knows Excel, I don't really care. I just need it to happen in the business. Who can I turn to? Who, if I need to turn to IT, I'll turn to IT. But I'll turn to whoever I need. Make sure that you're still hearing me because something just clicked. Could you put a drop a note in the chat if you're hearing me? Let's see. Yes, okay. So nothing weird happened there. Oh, okay. My share screen just disappeared. So let me stop. I don't think you're seeing my screen. Okay, something happened there. So let me share my screen again. Interesting. That wasn't me. Let me see what. Okay. All right. So there we go again. So our conference this year is focusing on these two skills, these two abilities or capacities, two which are particularly nagging for the reasons that we'll share. Okay, so I'd like to hear from you. What are some of the challenges you have in expanding your Excel skills, whether you're a beginner, you're an intermediate, or you're someone who's using the highest level tools, like I mentioned before? What are some of the challenges that you're facing? So go ahead and drop your answer in the chat. And in the meantime, I'm going to work on bringing up my colleagues. Join me on the stage. What are some of the challenges? One of the things that we know from dealing with lots of people around Excel skills and analytics is that there's sometimes a little bit of embarrassment. And we'll address some of that. Often HR professionals believe I should know more than I know. And I don't like to be caught out the way Celia was caught out. I don't want to be on the spot. So, folks, it's a safe space. We'll be gentle, but what are some of the challenges that you face in expanding your Excel skills, regardless of the level that they're at right now? Arlene says time. So caught up in meetings, writing, and coaching. Great. Thanks, Arlene. Who else? Go ahead. Remember we said this would be interactive. Understanding the formulas, says Darian. Great. Who else? Just keep dropping those notes in the chat. Working with formulas, Elma says. Those formulas can get you out. And really, the question that the CEO was asking of Celia had to do with adjusting a formula on the fly, under pressure. Who else? She's getting, folks are agreeing with the formulas. Any others? Okay. Right. So while we're working up some courage, folks, I'm gonna introduce you to our two guests because they are actually here on stage. I'm gonna introduce them. I'm gonna ask them to say something so that their face pops up on the screen. Jane is the first female CEO of the Business Supply Group in the company's more than 45 years of history. Company is located in Trinidad and Tobago. And guess what? Jane holds a Master of Human Resource Management. So I met Jane when Jane was an HR professional, HR manager. And she's gone on to much greater things since then. Jane, am I overselling your rise to the C-suite, or am I accurate?
You're accurate. Are you hearing me? Yes, you're accurate. I mean, hyping it up a little bit, but
Excellent. Folks, you may know that there's not that many HR professionals who have made it to the C-suite, and in fact, I don't know. I know of one other person who was an HR manager at one point, but doesn't actually have the training. But very, very, very rare to find. We're really, really glad to have her here because she's gonna, as you can imagine, she's been on both sides of this issue. So we'll see what she has to say. Kiran Ramganesh is an HR and people analytics professional. He has a varied background in data analytics, human resources, and organizational strategy. He also heads up the people analytics unit at Caribbean Airlines. Kiran, welcome to the webinar.
Hi, Francis. Hi, everyone. You all see me well?
Not yet.
Oh,
no
my
camera
video
yet.
Oh, it's just not loading. Hold on. Ah, there we go.
There we
Hi,
go.
everyone.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, great. Thanks, Kiran. So, folks, there's 4 secrets that we came up with when we put our heads together. Secrets that would allow you to play the same game that the others are playing in the C-suite. Because the truth is, you could imagine, if you haven't imagined this already, that there is a quiet conversation happening between the CEO and the CFO. And this conversation, believe it or not, wasn't all that important before the early 1980s. But since then, the CFO's profile has risen to be almost at the same level as the CEO. In some companies, they're at the same level. And the language that they talk between them is a language of what's the EBITDA this month? How can we get it up by 5 points next month? What's our revenue like from the different business units? What happened to this business unit? Why are they 4%? But it's all analytic between a CFO and a CEO. And as a result, CFOs have gained in power in the C-suite. And they are bringing along the other functions like marketing and sales and operations, and they're becoming more analytic. So when we talk about this secret leadership club, it's a club in which analytics is the point of entry. That's the ticket to get in. And having expertise in analytics, way beyond the level of what you saw with Celia, is not just important, it's how the big decisions get made. So here are the 4 secrets that we want to help you to answer or know about and make some progress. And we're going to offer some solutions in each of them and tell you some of our stories. The first one actually has to do with what Arlene said, which is finding the time without overworking yourself. The second is how to find the budget. You don't want to be in the position where you have to beg for the budget. Okay? You want to be in a better position than that. But to find the budget to improve your skills and that of the other folks in the entire business. But let's focus on HR for now. How to convince your management that you should have these skills. Because there are some CEOs who think to themselves that I wish my HR manager had these skills, but they don't demand them of the HR function. So they don't really ask because they don't expect. The expectation is so low. So how do you convince your management that you should have these skills without looking as if you are less than or feeling embarrassed? And the fourth is, how do you show the ROI from having these Excel skills without needing to sell, and prove? So let's jump right in with the first secret. So the first secret has to do with time management and finding the time to improve these skills. So actually, this is one where I'm going to share a little bit about the book that I wrote on this very same topic. So the book that I wrote is Perfect Time-Based Productivity. And the 3-part framework I want to share with you has to do with capturing, emptying, and scheduling. I'll explain what that is in a minute. But just to give a little bit of background, I returned to live in Jamaica in 2005. And prior to returning, I was someone who used to teach time management training when I lived in the United States. And so that's someone who had a lot of training and had been delivering courses. I'd actually stopped doing it because I'd moved on to more strategy type stuff as opposed to time management type stuff. When I came back to Jamaica, I thought, oh, this shouldn't be too hard because, I've been pretty effective in the States. Anyone here has returned from living in a developed country to living in the Caribbean, you may realize that what my aha means is that it was way harder than I thought. And what I discovered was that things were flying through the cracks and I was being very ineffective. And I decided to try some new techniques and they didn't work. I thought that what I had been teaching was wrong. And part of it was wrong, yeah. The new techniques I picked up didn't work. And in frustration, I went to do a whole bunch of research. That research led me to pick up time blocking in a new way. It also led me to write this book. And the stress that I had experienced at the time melted away. So I'm going to share with you what this framework is, the three parts that I just shared. But before I do that, you may wonder, the name of the book, the subtitle of the book is How to Rescue Your Peace of Mind as Time Demands Increase. The whole book is about time demands, and a time demand is like an internal task that you give yourself. In other words, it's an individual commitment that you make to yourself to complete an action in the future. So here's how the framework works in a nutshell. First is that you write every new task down on paper or you capture it electronically, no matter what. The second is that you set time aside to empty that piece of paper and you empty that device. You take those tasks and you empty them into where? A schedule. So if you're to watch a high-performing college student, you would see that they do this regularly. And when it comes to learning a new skill like Excel, and there's just not the spare time in most people's day to learn a skill like that. It's got to be in your calendar. It's got to be scheduled. So in the training coming up, we're going to encourage you to schedule your learning in your calendar, including class time, homework time. We're going to have you in cohorts, in small groups. We're going to probably have you have a coach for your small group. So spend time with your coach. It should all be in your calendar. And when something is in your calendar, the research shows that you're way more likely to achieve your goals, especially when it comes to new skill acquisition. But let me bring Karen and Jane into this. Where have they used a technique like this? Where has it made a difference? They can share from their own experience because both of them are extremely time stressed individuals. I don't mean stressed, but I mean is that they commit to very big things in the work that they do, especially at the highest level. So guys, anybody want to jump in or who'd like to jump in first?
I'll say ladies first, but I'm not sure if Jane wants to jump in.
I can jump in. Are you guys hearing me clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. For me, time management is something that I struggled with at the beginning, like Francis, even though I did teach time management at one point when I worked at Scotiabank. And I did find that time blocking really makes a big difference. As a leader as well, you don't create enough time for those strategic elements of your day. And planning, strategy, and stepping back to think about the strategy of your department doesn't happen when you have the time, because you never have the time. Operational issues will always be at the forefront. So anytime I wanted to reflect on the strategy, kind of do a comparison of where I was last year to this year, get kind of some of the action items that are supposed to support the strategy and look to see how far along I'd come and the team, I would book time with myself. And I would say strategy review with Jane White so that I could actually lock it in. Because otherwise, it doesn't happen by accident when I'm just sitting down, twiddling my thumbs at work, because that almost never happens. So yeah, so that's my experience.
Yeah, so I remember, early in my HR career, because I fell into HR by accident, as most people would know. And it was trying to understand what's happening in HR. Now, I had some Excel skill coming from an IT background, but applying, as I mentioned in the chat, applying some of those skills towards, HR activities, HR projects, it was a bit of a learning curve to try to understand how do we shift that. And balancing, putting out the fires, the operational stuff, as Jane mentioned, they do take up a lot of your time. So what I started doing was blocking off sections of time on my calendar. And I'm more of a morning person. So if you're a morning or afternoon person, you block off half an hour section, of your time. Just block it off and call it, let's say, development time or Excel time, that kind of stuff. And what I use that time for me, it was early in the morning, and I would practice, a new function, a new formula, and look at, some HR data and learn a little bit every day. It's incremental, and it gives you the practice all the time. So you're kind of forcing yourself to say, okay, this block of time is for this, and I'm not gonna allow other items to come in the way. So that's what actually helped me develop, and of course continue to develop, because I'm looking at, more Power BI stuff, more AI type technologies. So I use that time every day. And as Francis said, we are, involved in quite a lot of stuff. So it's difficult to manage your time if you just have it running. But if you have something notifying you that this is what you have to do, even an alarm popping up, to alert you, hey, you have 1 to 1:30 to set towards this time, it will work, a little every day. Yeah. So that's just my take on it.
Great. Thanks, guys. No, you're very, very right and correct in asking, if you're just joining the webinar, what in the world does time management have to do with learning Excel skills? And it goes right to the surveys that we did of our membership, of the conversations that we had with those who were in the class last year, and right to what Arlene said about having the time, is that many HR professionals do not pick up these skills, but because they say to themselves, I don't have the time. So one of the parts that we're going to be putting into the program, the training that we're going to be offering, is how do you create this time? It's for us, given the importance of having these skills, we want to give you everything that you need so that you can end up at the end of the day being able to demonstrate that you've picked up something, something that the C-suite finds valuable, and you did it because the C-suite finds it valuable and because it's critical to the core of the business where these secret conversations are being held. Okay. All right. So here's the second secret. How do you find the budget to kickstart your Excel skills? So I'm moving on at a clip here just because interest of time. So budget is a huge issue that we've picked up as we spoke to different people. And the notion is that the company won't pay for my training in this area. I don't want to beg. There is no budget left for training HR. As you probably know, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, compared to today, there were massive training budgets. And most companies are, as a result of the recession and COVID, have now cut their training right back to the bone. And the budget for HR's training is particularly lean because all the training dollars are going to the essential functions that the company can't do without. So this is a big deal, because the person who has to be convinced, well, let's bring Jane up, because Jane came up with the lunch budget framework, and I'm going to ask her to share how she created this framework. So there's 4 bits to it. There's gap, search, isolate, and learn. Okay, so the lunch budget framework. So let me ask Jane to come up and share with us how she created this framework and how she uses it, and she'll take us through each of the steps one by one.
Hi guys. So the lunch budget framework is very much like the lunch and learn kind of concept. And I know that we speak about not having the time, which was the #1 secret, and not having the budget. However, for me, these are just excuses. At the end of the day, there is so much free content that is available more than ever before. So when you look at platforms like YouTube, Instagram, even TikTok, which is one of the most frequently used apps that I use right now, because it's now like a search engine. So it actually operates similar to Google, especially for all the Gen Alphas, Gen Zs, the millennials. They have started switching that into their new Google, believe it or not. And if you're not on TikTok, that's okay. I suggest you do. It follows algorithms that you like. So for a little while, I went down this whole little rabbits eating strawberries, and that's all that I saw. little rabbits. So it's quite cute. But again, what you like and what you follow is what you are fed more into on TikTok. And we're talking about short form content, which is 30 seconds, 60 seconds. The longest kind of content that I would normally look on TikTok is 2 minutes. And you can choose something specific to look up and watch it in under 2 minutes, under 5 minutes. If you look at more of the longer form content that you see on YouTube, you can literally search HR analytics formulas. You can copy and paste from things that you find on Google. So for me, time is not a relevant excuse or budget. And some of the things that you can find that are free and available are all over. Now, what I would say is you're not going to get an expert level on TikTok and YouTube immediately, although there are a lot of modules for Excel, but it's not necessarily the same as an actual course, but you can upskill yourself. And I would encourage every single one of you to just type up HR analytics formulas in Google, and you will see what you can get. You can literally copy and paste it. You can even do it right now as you're listening to me. Pull it up, look at it later. And so once you identify the specific gap that you have, you can then actually just have that one item, go over it for 5 minutes in whatever medium you want in terms of where you receive your content, and get those specific formulas or those specific ROIs that will be helpful to you. And in that way, you close your skills gap in a very short space of time for free. So that's really the lunch budget framework that I normally think about when people tell me I don't have the budget and I don't have the time. And my thing is, you eat lunch, well, then you have the time. And if you don't eat lunch, you should be eating lunch, and you should make the time to do that. So that's my thoughts on my lunch budget framework.
I just dropped a question there for you, Jane, about the transition that you made, because as you back in the days when you and I used to have lunch or used to meet at rituals.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were HR. I suspect that your relationship to budget was I know your relationship to budget was very different than it is today. And the thoughts that you have about the budget have changed over time. Can you let us into a little bit of how you made that transition from being an HR professional all the way to CEO, to the point where budgets mean, well, you tell us, what was that like, making that transition throughout your career?
Yeah, for sure, there's a difference. When you are fighting for your budget in HR, you expect it to be approved, and you can't. Well, for me in particular, I could not imagine how they could not approve these training budgets because it was so important, and don't they understand the value? But going into that CEO role, the mindset shifts. What is the value? How am I getting value from bringing all my managers into one room, providing them with lunch, having their staff on their own for an entire day or 3 days? What is the value? Because I'm now managing overall budgets. And when you're faced with breakdowns, whether you work in a manufacturing organization or you have different factors and different elements to pay for that are really critical, and when you're ordering stock, the training budgets do fall behind in terms of priority. So then it is about showing the need for these budgets. And I will give you an example. So my HR manager that I have now, who's amazing, shout out to Christine King, she would come to me with budgets as well. And I would forget everything that I knew in my past life as an HR professional. And I was like, we don't have the money. And that would kind of be my blanket statement. Because as a CEO, you really kind of have to fight against that mindset, especially when you're trying to manage expenses tightly. And I would have had the conversation with her, and we would have done time to hire metrics, like how long is it taking us to replace a position? And what we would have done is go through our free versions, our LinkedIn posts, a Facebook post, an Instagram post, and many times we would get the right people through those methods. However, when it came to salespersons, when she showed me the data and said, Jane, the time to hire for non-sales positions takes about 2 to 3 months. But when you're going for the free options, the time to hire for a salesperson just using traditional methods is now taking 3 and 4 months. And then my thing to her was, why didn't you just say that? And she was like, I was trying to. I was like, you didn't put it in an ROI metric that I could understand, because now my brain is more CEO than it is HR. So it really is trying to orient yourself and understand that every dollar and cent counts, and it has to be worth it. And I do believe the training budgets are worth it, and I do believe recruitment costs are worth it, and all the HR budgets are worth it. But we have to link it for the CEOs and the CFOs to really support and validate the those expenses. And what I would have seen sometimes in my journey to add value from an HR perspective, some of the things that I wanted to spend money on, I think were nice to have. And I'm not saying like team building, and I'm just chalking up all the nice to haves as those types of things, because there's lots of elements under the soft skills category that are important. But when you really look at what you want to spend money on, if you're tasked with reducing your expenses, it gives you a different lens, and you understand better about what value creation is added to the company level from that expense standpoint. So it definitely is a mindset shift, going and leaving HR and coming into the CEO role.
Wait, can you take us through the four, unless Karen wants to jump in with a experience of his own, Karen, or should we have Jane take us through the 4 steps?
Just a quick one, because as Jane was talking, there were like about 3 or 4 scenarios that just kind of popped up for me, and she did mention manufacturing, and I was in a scenario where we had to kind of figure out overtime payments that were happening within manufacturing, and to build a model in terms of showing two scenarios where do we continue with a particular shift type, like the 12-hour shifts, or do we run like 3 8-hour shifts? And to build that model, I didn't really know at that time, because this was maybe about 12, 13 years ago, and I had to do some research. And yes, YouTube was helpful at the time, but also documentation. We aren't lucky like today with all of the facets and the social media links, right? And being able to isolate that and pull a function that was able to actually show the difference, if we run 2 shifts or 3 shifts and we had to pay the overtime plus that, it actually lent towards, the senior management making decisions on how do we expand that team and the recruitment that was needed for the capacity that we required. So because of the spend and those figures that they had. So it's really important, yes, to be able to think about what is the gap that we need to fill, and then of course being able to try to do your searching, because there are lots of free resources out there that can actually help you. It's just about being a bit creative and trying to figure out, okay, how do we solve our problem using some of the resources we have available? Yeah. So I do really like where the conversation is going, and of course being able to prove that, because analytics is all about evidence, right? So we have the evidence, just like what Jane was saying earlier. Show the figures, show the time frame, show the cycle time, and once you're able to do that, we can now establish that baseline and work on how do we determine ways in which we can improve those. Yeah, so that's just my take on it.
When you hear Karen talk, folks, it's kind of like he's like fluent. It just kind of just rolls out of him as if it were a second language, and that's exactly where we want to get. First steps first, is Excel is like your way of managing the data that allows you to tell the stories that Jane and Karen are saying. So Jane, could you take us through the 4 steps? And folks, you should be taking a picture of the screen and so that you can remember these 4 steps. Go ahead, Jane.
Yeah. So if the gap is not understanding how to prove recruitment costs as a necessity, most HR professionals would know that it can be quite expensive to advertise on Caribbean jobs. However, it's extremely useful. So if your gap is not understanding how to present retention costs and time to hire costs, you can't necessarily then build a good case to say why you need to go through the more expensive recruitment options. So you go and you search and you type in Google, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and you search retention analytics, you search time to hire metrics. And so those things are isolated. These are the areas you want to focus on, and then you press play after gathering quite a few different things, and you press learn. You press learn in your mind and actually absorb the information. Because at the end of the day, if you are truly searching and interested in your own development, when you start following different creators online, some of them are specialized. So some of them are HR professionals and their unique specialty is training or HR analytics. So you follow the people who will give you the best bang for your time, because the budget is $0. It's just really time.
Great. All right. Thanks, Jane. So let's move on to that third secret. Let me see if there are no questions. And then the chat is like suspiciously quiet. So for the second two secrets, folks, we want to get those fingers working, because this is an opportunity to get your questions answered from folks who could really answer. So the third secret is, how do you convince your CEO that you should have these analytic skills without making it look like you don't have a clue? So this one is particularly dicey, as I mentioned before, because there's some CEOs who have just given up on HR having these skills. They simply exclude HR from the conversations that they have with the CFO. The conversations move quickly. The conversations are based in numbers. They can be kind of sharp elbowed. We'll ask Jane about this. When she's talking with her CFO and she gets demanding and she wants the numbers now, and why can't we get 5% out of this area, and why can't this, and how come you're not doing this part? And it's a different world. It's not the world that oftentimes CEOs want to expose HR to. So here's the secret. Here's the framework or the steps that we're recommending. The first is that you understand the analytics to be presented. Second is you show why the ROI is important. And the third is that you use multiple specific examples. So guys, Karan and Jane, you've both been, Jane has been the CEO and Karan works with the CEO. So you have a real idea of what would appeal to the CEO, the person who is receiving the request or the information or has formed this opinion of HR, and what would move the needle in terms of taking a benefits first approach. So I know both of you use this approach already. So who'd like to go first? Maybe Karan, how did you come up with this approach?
Yeah, I'll tackle this one. So I remember starting Caribbean Airlines about just over 2 years ago, and having meetings with different heads, senior managers, etc., and of course having a chat with the HSE manager. And I had this meeting with the HSE manager and the CEO. And when you have, we have our HR head on, we have the HR hat while we're talking with senior management. But we do have, I remember, we're talking about, okay, number of incidents and things happening and all these things. And what the CEO was more concerned with, okay, how is this impacting the company in terms of our bottom line? What's our downtime looking like? And of course, we would have provided downtime. But what I realized is that he was focused heavily on, compliance with OSHA, ensuring, our costs were covered and that we aren't excessively losing based on certain downtime. So it shifted now, the initial discussion I had with the HSE manager, and we took a look at the compliance standard, of course, for OSHA, and looked at a metric called lost time incident frequency rate. Because there was this perception from the HSE manager that things were looking good. But from the CEO's perspective, it was like, there's still impact on the business and it seems to be consistent. So we used the metric and I pulled in things such as, hourly rate that applied towards lost time incidents. And we'll be able to prove that while the company has a certain amount of downtime and it is costing the company, and it now justifies us to do some corrective action like training and getting personal protective equipment, etc. The CEO, I was able to prove to the CEO that it wasn't as bad as he thought in terms of the business impact. Because of that one metric, it was actually better. So we were in a better state. But now, from the CEO's perspective, we now were able to change his story and share with him, okay, we can further improve it by ensuring we get put in some corrective action in place. And by showing how much it actually was costing the company in downtime, we were now able to justify a smaller investment in terms of a training budget and acquisition of certain protective resources that would aid in reducing this downtime cost to the company. So just from that perspective, when we speak to senior management, we have to shift our mindset from just thinking about, okay, there's the HR, there's the people side of it, in terms of what, focus now on what the business impact is and how can it really impact the bottom line of the business. So that was just a simple, very easy story from my experience there, Francis.
Great. Jane?
So if you're struggling at all with the benefits first approach, I would suggest have a conversation with your CFO. What are the benefits that the CEO is looking at? If you don't know that already, and if you're not in the rooms where those kind of conversations are happening, lean on your CFO. They're your peer. They are someone that you're supposed to have a good working relationship with, and ask them, how are other managers getting their budgets approved? What are the things that the CEO is looking for in terms of benefit? What are the areas of the strategic plan that makes the biggest difference in the company's success? Of course, you should know these things already, but if you do not, you're supposed to have the strategic plan, you're supposed to have this information, you're supposed to have your HR budget, all of those things should be available to you, and you have, but if you don't, you need to have that. And if you report into the HR manager or the HR head of the department, that is the person that you need to get that information from. And if they don't have it, you need to request it. Because the only way that you can do a benefits first approach is if you know what benefit the CEO and the organization prioritizes. So that would be my suggestion there.
Great. Can you share a bit about how once again the benefit first, how you've become more benefit first focused as you sort of made your move from HR to the CEO's office, and what happens when someone needs to speak benefits first when they speak to you as the CEO?
Yeah, I think it's helpful when they understand the priorities of the organization, especially in today's world where cash flow is something that's so important. So the IT manager might say, our telecom system, our phone system is on its last legs and we need to replace it this year, and I've been holding off for so long. And you as the HR professional might say, we need to increase our salaries because things are challenging, and that's going to increase our payouts on a monthly basis by 10%, 5%, 3%, whatever it is. And the production manager might say, my machine, specifically in the bindery department, isn't working well and I need to replace that. And if I don't replace that, we stop production in that area. So you have competing reasons to spend money and to spend time on certain things. So having an appreciation of how you line up with the other competing factors is also important. So when I would get a request sometimes from a department head, I would go to the finance manager and just refresh myself with, okay, what do we have this month or the next 2 months? Because I know that we agreed to do our new ERP system and that we have to pay the final payment of the rollout, and that's $100,000. And the phone system, it stopped working yesterday because of the situation. Then you as the HR professional, if you know these things, you can then show the benefit, but you can also tie that benefit into timing, and start phasing and pre-planning the money that you want to spend a little bit more effectively if you're not doing that as well. Because not only am I looking at the benefit, I'm also looking at the benefit that HR wants to spend in comparison to the other competing needs as well. So as that HR transition to the CEO, I think when I was in HR, I didn't care, I didn't know, I wasn't educated on what everybody else was trying to do or the money that everybody else was trying to spend. I didn't know the dollar value, I didn't know the timing, because certain things that operate in an organization sometimes happen quarterly, and I might have been asking for something, get told no, because it literally lines up in the quarter that everything else needs to be paid at that time. So it's really having a good understanding of the other competing demands. And I would probably say that there are times that I would have said no to something as a CEO that I should have said not now, maybe in 3 months. But the person just heard the no and then walked away. And that's not just HR, that's other areas as well. So it's really trying to understand those specific things.
Yeah, and to echo what you're saying there, Jane, You know, when you look at the approach, by understanding, you know, before you go to the CEO, as you rightly said, you know, talk to other managers, etc. It's really understanding what's valuable for them. At this point, are we concerned about turnover, productivity? Are we concerned about workforce planning? And then when we understand where their priority is, we also have to understand the limited budget, that constrained budget that everybody's competing for. They would prioritize those investments based on what they are interested in. So if we have to make a pitch, we have to ensure that our pitch aligns to what their business objectives are, because it will now show that we are now a higher priority, and it now increases the chances of you getting that investment. And of course, using proper examples in terms of real cases, other companies applying it, what are the benefits? So you actually have no evidence to work alongside with your projections and your figures to aid in them understanding and saying, okay, yes, this could work because there is evidence of it being able to work. So the chances are pretty high, and it now further bolsters your pitch, and so that you can get that support for what you're doing.
Wait, Karen, you want to take us through the 3 steps really quickly?
Okay.
I'll summarize.
Yeah. So like let's say we're thinking about let's say turnover, for instance. And so the organization is interested, they're very concerned about, you know, turnover, and they want to ensure that they retain their people. So we have certain metrics that would align with what the senior management will be interested in. They might be looking at, you know, let's say our turnover rate for certain areas. It might be further broken down by department, division, etc. We'll also be looking at retention and the factors that would lend towards people staying within the organization. And so we are now taking those metrics and we are going to align them to what the business is concerned with. So we are going to provide evidence that will help them gain some insight in terms of the question they're asking within the business arena. And of course, we're going to use examples of, okay, other organizations who would have encountered these issues with turnover, more than likely on the root cause which we would have identified, let's say compensation schemes, let's say type of management, type of leadership, all of these items would have led towards that. So we have other cases that prove very similarly to what we are going through, where we can add value by reducing turnover, by, let's say, training, by improving performance in certain areas, or even recruiting the right people. Maybe there are factors that would have led towards turnover. Perhaps we weren't hiring the right people. And, you know, exit data, summaries, and all those things would have been contributing towards that evidence we would have been building. So taking the HR hat and understanding your metrics, aligning it towards what the business is looking at and what the business considers important, being able to speak their language, pull in the figures, pull in the dollars and cents, the bottom line. That's the only way you're really going to be gaining support, because both of you all will be speaking the same language. Jane, I'll be pitching some good cases to you then, if I follow this process.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to the 4th secret. And the 4th one it's actually one we've mentioned this term before, which is of course ROI. But after you gain these new skills, how do you demonstrate them so that your CEO knows that that dollar was well spent, that your CFO can see the return on investment without you having to, you know, come across like you're selling the fact that this was a good investment? So the budget first technique is one that Jane uses, and she's mentioned this a little bit before about going to the CFO first. I've never heard this before, but go to the CFO first, and then there's I don't know what the steps. I don't remember what the steps are, but for free, and then sticking to what you like to do, and then supporting the organization. So let me ask Jane, how did you discover this technique?
I think it was being in the CEO role, I guess, makes you think differently. And, you know, I've just like you said, like the CFO in recent times has really become that right hand. I mean, always was to an extent that right hand of the CEO. And normally the CEO comes from that commercial sales side or the CEO side, or the CFO side. So getting their inputs is critical. And so I've even found myself in being in the CEO position. I would ask, because I'm not looking at the bank balances and then reviewing it along with all the things that we had to pay that day or that month. So I'm not reviewing that every single day to have it in my head all the time. So I often lean on the finance manager, to say, I know that we had to pay these things that are a big chunk, the normal things, that's fine. But she would refresh my memory and help. So it really is about understanding where it's at. And then, as I worked with finance and I was the one responsible for doing the budgets of the company, that really puts things in perspective. When you look at the budgets that you have to meet for the board, what requirements are made for the profit targets and the sales targets, everything, you really see how it all wraps up into one. So understanding value is pretty critical. So that's kind of how I would have seen it, because when I had to manage a budget of a company, it puts a really different spin on everything.
Yeah, and Karen, I know you use a similar technique. How did you discover that taking that route, the money first route or the CFO first route, actually makes a difference?
Yeah, I remember we had a training budget, right? So of course that training budget was split across multiple departments. And at that period in time, that was when, cybersecurity was now becoming a kind of hot topic, the ransomware thing, people getting attacked and all those things. And the IT department, through senior management meeting, spoke about it and the importance of cybersecurity. And IT just kind of jumped out at it. And they had a proposal, okay, we have this course we want to go on, train these people. And it was a fair amount of money. And everybody assumed that there was budget for that. And okay, it was approved, all they signed off and everything. And by the time these guys were already abroad, there was some issues with regard to payments because of the cost center not having the relevant budgets in place. And there was a kind of quick scramble to try to get things organized. It even reached a point where people had to come back. Well, we could have brought people back, but fortunately, we had some contingencies in place to deal with it. But yeah, that was a huge point of concern with the process where, we need to ensure that while it's very tempting to put corrective action and all these things sounds great and we say, okay, good. But it really is important to know that if this is priority, let's ensure that we have the finances in place to get it done. And if not, determine where we're going to get the finances, how they're going to shift things around, and even consider, lower cost options and all these things too, if the budgets aren't available and, time is of the essence, you want to get it done. So, that's just some of the things you need to think about rather than rushing in head first and saying, everything sounds good.
Great. So Jane, I have you queued up to take us through the 4 steps and what that looks like in your world, your current world. I know you can't go back to being an HR manager, but if you could speak to both sides of the fence, that might help our audience kind of appreciate the transition you made.
You mean just in general, Francis? You want to just provide a little bit more context for that?
Yes. For CFO budget first, and then for free, just take us through the 4 steps.
Sure. So I think I spoke to the CFO budget first before that. I hope that if you need any more information, put it down in the chat. But it really is being aligned with the CFO. And the one person that the CEO is going to ask if they're in doubts about spending money on something is the CFO. So, that's the person that they consult. So definitely have that strong relationship with that person in your organization. And obviously for free, that's a no-brainer. I walked this through with you guys, and understanding that just because it's for free doesn't mean it can't elevate your knowledge. But of course, you're not going to get, as I said, that expert level. And even sometimes, intermediate, yes, but you can learn pieces of things that are really useful for free. So utilize those things, because, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when I now started in HR, there's not, you have to, I think I still had Encyclopedia Britannica floating around. I was going to a dictionary. Google was now starting. When I was in university, Facebook just started. There's so many options now. So don't take that for granted. And of course, get excited, like to do the metrics and trying to find joy in elevating your skills, because that's what you're telling people in the organization as an HR professional. We are always encouraging others in the workplace to upskill themselves and learn more. And we can't expect others to do that if we're not willing to do that as well. And trends are changing. And, start with the metrics that excite you, especially when there's a need, just like, and I'm running with this same example, so it's top of mind. But for the recruitment expenses, several of the good recruitment agencies, you have to put a down payment, and the budget sometimes, for that is zero. People don't often budget for recruitment. And for me, learn to see the value in what happens, as a result of you presenting the metric. And then the supporting the organization is something that you can see. So you can see that before, when we were using the free ways of recruitment, we were taking 3 to 4 months to hire sales professionals. Since we started going on Caribbean Jobs, or since we engaged a recruitment company, we now found the last salesperson in 6 weeks. And feel good about that. And obviously that's presenting the ROI and that return, and you cycle back. Don't just present what's happening, present what happened after the investment was approved, and get excited about that.
So so folks, we're almost at the end, but I'd like to hear from both Jane and Karen, because they have a view, I'm sure, as to what the future holds for HR with respect to having, cracking these 4 secrets, the ROI, the budget, the benefit, and the time. What do you see for the future? How is it going to change for HR professionals in terms of the workplace changing, and what are C-suites going to be asking more from HR? What's the new ask, or how is it changing from your point of view?
So I'll tackle this one first. Give Gina a little time to catch her breath. We have always been talking about, over the recent years, we've been talking about, HR getting a seat at the table, right? And now we are seeing HR, getting the seat. But it's not just about having a seat. It is about contributing towards the wider business benefits. And it does require a shift in terms of how we think about the HR processes that we're involved in. It's not just about doing it for the people and for the employees. That's great, because that doesn't change. The role and purpose of HR doesn't change. But what happens is, how do we prove that value being generated in the company, right? And Laura, so I'd like to kind of answer your question there. So let me use an example using Laura's question, right? If it is we taking too long, right? If we are taking too long with the turnaround time for recruitment, what usually happens is we might get a lower acceptance rate. If we take long to hire people, they're probably looking for other jobs too, right? So acceptance rate will go down. Probably we might lose really good talent because we took too long to offer them a position. Yeah. So if it is, we're seeing that, and we're seeing we're at, let's say, a 60% acceptance rate, figuring out where those bottlenecks are is important. Did we find those people through a particular source? Is there a bottleneck within the process where a certain manager is taking too long to approve a shortlist, or even after we have the scores? So if we could actually show that here, what the downtime of that role now has increased to maybe a further 6 weeks, that's a cost to the organization, right? So the benefit of actually hiring people faster, we're gonna get that uptake much faster in terms of the capacity and, of course, the capability and skills within the company. So it's not just about like using metrics. So a metric is really just a small part of the whole analytics process. So HR people need to we need to think past the metric. Don't get caught in that metric trap. So you go to the metric, you compare how it has our turnover rate or has our cycle time improved over the last 6 months. And then, of course, was the trend or pattern we expect if this continues? And then, of course, was the business benefit of that happening? So at the end of it, does this improve, let's say, customer service? Does it improve the manner was where we reduce burnout? So there's a lot of connectivity across the metrics. So we have to understand that the workforce and HR person needs to understand our workforce is connected to business outcomes. And we have multiple metrics that look at every stage of that employee life cycle, and they all contribute towards the business outcome. So we need to kind of shift now and add on, on top of what we currently do. How does the work that we do impact the business? Yeah. So hopefully I give you a little answer there, Lodra.
Great, thanks. Jane?
I would just say it's continuing to trend, especially in Trinidad, competing priorities. So understanding the priorities of the other department heads and their associated budgets are important, because what I would have seen happening in my organization is some of the leaders going to each other and saying, how bad you really need this upgrade? Like, you don't think I could just come in there before you? Because cash flow is definitely a big thing. And in Trinidad, I've seen a cycle of debt, rolling around, and its cash flow is important. So, that trend towards prioritizing is important. So if you can get another leader to agree to defer their expenses before you even go to the CFO, before you go to the CEO, that's a little way that could help the situation.
So the folks, you've heard, boy, we've not gotten together a couple of folks from our region to deliver a message like this, and it's absolutely, as you can imagine, pretty unique to bring together a CEO and someone who heads up an HR analytics unit. And the good news is that the lessons that they shared today, we only had an hour and a bit, and the lessons that we shared today are kind of just the iceberg, because what we really want to accomplish here at CaribHRForum, our mission, is to have our people who take our conference and our members at large, everyone who's in contact with us, to show up in the C-suite with the skills, the language, the insight, the trade-offs, the 4 secrets under their belt, so that others around them, the CEO, the CFO, the chairman of the board, can see and take the new skills into account and see that HR is in the analytics club that they imagine HR has not been in. So we're on a mission for that. So here's, once again, if you weren't here before, you're in the first webinar. We're going to offer another webinar on October 17th. That's going to focus on analytics unit, developing an analytics unit in your company. And coming up are workshops. I'll tell you a little bit about the first workshop, which is about developing your Excel skills, the first 2. And the second 2 workshops are about developing and crafting an analytics unit in your company. And at the end of that sequence, you will receive a certificate, maybe looking something like this, to give you an idea of what it's like. And today we don't have any pricing, but here's what an all-access pass would look like, which would include the entire series. You'd get all the replays from last year as well as this year, all the webinar replays. You get to be in, of course, the first tools workshop, November 2nd and 16th. They'll be recorded in case you're going to miss any of them for any reason. The analytics unit workshop would be on January 11th and 25th. There are 17 CPUs or CPDs available, if that's something that you want to keep a track of. It's a total number of hours of classroom instruction, and you get the certificate. And we're going to open registration in the next webinar on October 17th. So there's nothing to register in today. But if you want a side-by-side comparison of the 2 packages that we're likely to offer, one package includes all of the training. The other package is just the Excel skills training. If you're in a small business and it's not likely that they're going to have a HR analytics unit anytime soon, that might be more suitable for you. Although these skills are skills that are very hard to acquire, and I'm really recommending that everyone consider seriously taking the sequence. So as I said, there's nothing to sign up for today. However, if you're not on our mailing list, you should jump over to our community and grab a complimentary membership. And that way we'll keep you in the loop and keep in touch and be able to let you know when the next course is and how to register, what the new links are, and where to access the replays from this session. And also, when the discounts will be available, because there will be early bird discounts for the workshops that we have coming up. So with that, I'd like for you to join me in thanking our guests. Oh, hold on. There's a question. It's a little bit late for the question. I'm sorry, Colette. If you jump into the lounge afterwards, we can get one of our experts to answer the question. But folks, join me in thanking Karen and Jane for being a part of, sharing their expertise. Oh, this thing happened again. Okay, all sorts of things jumping all over the place. Okay, let me stop sharing and bring them up. And folks, join me in thanking them for joining us and sharing this unique perspective. This really is kind of just the beginning of something, just the start. Where we're headed here is way past just the Excel skills stage, but it's got to start, with a firm foundation. And guys, you have any parting shots to wish to our audience as we say goodbye?
No, thanks for coming in, and of course it shows that you're ready to take the next step.
Yeah, I echo what Karen is saying. It's important as HR professionals to learn these types of skills to elevate the profession as a whole. So good on you for making it this far.
Great, thanks, folks, and thanks to you, our audience. Thanks to each and every person who showed up. Thank you very, very much, and wish you all the best. Take care.
Take care, guys.
See you in the lounge.